Hello everyone, welcome to my video. Today I want to give you guys a tour of my custom built workbench workstation all-in-one solution, which I built a few years ago. So let's get straight into it. The overall structure, the frame. So you have a 2x4 construction all the way around. And there are four main support pillars on on both sides. So 1, 2, and there's one over here, 3, and then the fourth one is right behind my crosscut sled over here. And on the corners, I went ahead and I reinforced the corners with this 45-degree piece of 2x4s that was also diagonally cut and glued up and then screwed together. Over here, here I have some additional reinforcement for 2x4s, and that's primarily because I'm supporting the whole table saw and it's standing on its own because it's freestanding, so that it can be lifted up if I needed to. It's not being held together with the tabletop at all. It's freestanding by itself, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the table saw section. So let's start with the tabletop. Let's start with the dimensions. The overall dimensions are 36 inches wide by 84 inches long. So that's 3 feet by 7 feet. The workbench top, it's 2 sheets of 3/4 of an inch plywood put together, and it's all being held together just with screws. And again, I'm a big fan of SPAC screws, very easy to use. They require no pre-drilling, so I use them a lot. So it's just arbitrarily placed locations for these screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then here you can see I embedded a few T-tracks, and these allows me to put my some accessories, specifically these clamps, very handy clamps that I can use to mount to be able to clamp my work material once I'm done cutting it and breaking it down into the dimension that I need for me to take it to the next phase, which usually involves either gluing it together or some kind of joinery. In any of that, idea was to essentially have some kind of an assembly section to hold the piece together, to do various kind of things on it. And the other thing, as you can tell probably by now, is that the way I designed it, that both of my main tools, so the table saw and the router table, are absolutely flush with the tabletop surface. And this wasn't by chance. This was kind of the main idea when I designed it, to have the whole surface absolutely flush and level. So this piece, for example, if I take it around, I'm going to move it, it doesn't get caught anywhere. Everything is absolutely flush. And that's by design, so that I could not have any obstruction whenever I'm cutting stuff or doing anything where it requires that piece to travel different longer distances, and which typically involves when I'm cutting it through my table saw. So the whole work surface is divided up arbitrarily, you could say, into 3 sections. You have section 1 here. Let me talk about that first. So section 1, as I touched on a little bit, this is dedicated majorly it was designed around the table saw. This area where I'm standing at right now, it's the widest portion of my one-car garage side, and I kept the table saw, the whole workstation positioned in a way that will allow me to be able to feed some linear long pieces, which may have to be broken down. So whether I'm doing a rib cut, give it a good amount of stability feeding into the table saw. So table saw takes a centerpiece here, and these sides over here that I cut down, I just routed these little indentations here, was to allow me to again pull this whole thing out, so that I can take it to another section in my room, or maybe to a friend's place if I'm doing any projects for them. I do that occasionally, time to time. And then on this side of this section over here, just there's my woodworking vise that I'm about to replace with a Mox-on vise, and some of my hand drivers and stuff, which I very frequently use, because I do use a lot of projects where I'm doing some kind of screwing, unscrewing kind of an activity. And then on the other side of this section is my crosscut sled, and it's nothing but it's just being held together, being held together with these metal dowels. So I drilled a hole on the surface, and they just this whole thing kind of sits into it. So the way I take it out, I'll just remove it like that, take it out, Oh, and this thing is pretty heavy, by the way, so just give me a second. I'm going to move this piece. And then I go ahead. And I'm doing this one-handed right now because I'm holding the camera from the other. But once I put it in here, it has these T-tracks, which allows which embeds into the T-tracks on the table saw, and allows it to make it a crosscut sled. So that's the size of section 1 of my workbench. Now over to section 2. So this is an area where I spend probably arbitrarily the most amount of time on any project, because most of the projects involve cutting the material first, breaking it down into the dimensions that I need to put it together. So whether I'm making a box, or I'm making a shelf, or I'm making a piece of furniture, tailor's station, and all of that requires, at the end of the day, cutting the piece, some kind of wood, into smaller, accurate dimensions so that they can be put together. And so once I'm done cutting, I spend a lot of time into the section where I needed to have my enough work surface where I can place the object and work on them, whether to finish it, whether to do whatever, gluing, finishing, sanding, staining, painting, all kinds of stuff. So here I have started with I have an anti-fatigue mat that I make sure that I use, that I stand on. So here, in this section, this is just a kind of a caddy that I put over here. This was another project that I did that didn't work out well. Or I guess it did work out well. It was a nail polish stand for my daughter that I built a multi-layered, and it was a little 2 extra layers in it. And she's like, "Dad, I don't use it," so I cut it off, and I'm using it to just hold all of my pencils and stuff. And I'm also making this usable as a kind of a drawer pull at the same time. So the way this section is designed is it's in the center of the whole workbench, and the idea was that I want to be able to have maneuverability on both sides, because depending upon the object, especially whenever I do a project where I'm using glue to join something, I'm going to have to clamp it, and when I'm clamping anything, you need space. Anybody who's worked with clamps to hold a project together, you need space. So in the center here, I put on all of my drawers to house all of my most frequently used work material. This top drawer runs the entire width of the workbench, so entire 36 inches. But this whole 36-inch drawer houses all of my most frequently used power tools. Oh, and yes, you got it. I am a Makita guy. I'm a big Makita fan. Love Makita. I've been using them for years and years, more than a decade, and I just never failed on me. I'm just a big fan. Drawer number 2 below it, now I have my frequently used hand tools, pliers, wrenches, and some driver bits and whatnot. I use these a lot on a frequent basis, and so I put them right on top here, and so they're easily available for me without having to bend down too much. And that's kind of how I put the stuff in here, with the order of its importance and how frequently I'll use it, so that I have to not bend down too much. Here I have some of my additional measuring tools, my measuring devices, chisels, and some other odd items here. Drawer number 3 has got most of my drill bits for different kinds of applications. And then it kind of gets below that, further down, which is the tools that I use that I'll not use as much are going to be further down like that. The other side of this section 2 is not very frequently used, and I still come at fence whether I really if I did the best job of getting the most value out of here or not. But what I have over here, this one giant drawer, and this was primarily designed to house 2 things. My cordless finished nailer, and then some of my battery charging stations right over here, because I knew that, so I mounted this electrical strip over here, and it's easy access for me to go ahead when the battery is worn out, come over here, plug it in, turn on the power right over here, and boom, it's going to start charging. It requires me to bend down a little bit, but it's not that big of a deal. Here's my dust collector chute, which is just by the way, Rockler system. Rockler rocks for some of the things, and this is a Rockler dust collection system that's mounted to my dust collector. But that's a video for some other day. So this completes section 2. So here comes section 3. So this is this portion of the table saw. I'm sorry, I keep saying table saw. Sorry. This portion of the workbench, and this is primarily dedicated to the router. The way I mounted the router table, as you can see from here, I mounted it in a way that is perpendicular to the table saw. And the primary reason for that was because the router bit is rotating this way, as you can see the arrow, so it's rotating this way, and you want to be able to feed your material into the bit. That's the number one rule. You don't want to feed it the other way, because then that would make that material the router is going to just kind of try to shoot it out. So for that, my thought was, which is the area which needs the most stability? So in a router table, the area that needs more stability is the area where you're actually feeding into the bit. So here it allows me to have this whole expansive 5+ feet of surface to stabilize the material that I want to route. So it can take a lot longer linear pieces of wood that I can route all the way through. And if it's really long, I can open up the garage door and can go all the way out. So it's really well worked out really well. I love the way it got positioned. And under here is, of course, the router, its own table. The router table is in box where you mount the actual router in it. And below that, I put these 2 drawers, and they're again all dedicated to the router itself. So the top drawer, it's got all of my bits, router bits. I don't have very many. The router bit changing wrenches, and the shelf and the drawer in the bottom is sagging a bit. I gotta fix it. This has got like the plunge router accessory, the attachment, and also some of the other attachment that came with the table saw, the router table, sorry. And on this side of this third section is where I have my Machinist Vise. So I apologize, the lighting is not the best in this area, but the way behind it's put together is just on this platform that I built. Again, it's nothing but two pieces of 3/4 inch plywood sandwiched together. And here I'm holding it together with machine screws, with machine bolts. And the way this works is I have this 2x3 leg that I simply use to stabilize it, and you'll see how this goes in a second. I'm going to put it down over here, and there's just a handle that I built over here, so it's just on a simple hinge mechanism. So once I lift it up, it comes up this high. I keep it up, and this thing is heavy, by the way. It's about about 60 pounds. So of concentrated weight, and it gets a lot. So once I go ahead, take me a second. I have a bolt here and below it. Yeah, so the idea is that I just have a leg that I put under it once I lift it up. So I wanted to make sure that since my Machinist Vise sometimes requires me to be able to hammer stuff and maybe straighten out pieces of metal and stuff, I didn't want to take a chance by having any of that force get exerted onto the workbench itself, because it's, again, at the end of the day, it's just 2x4 construction. That it's not very, it's solid, but it's not designed for heavy duty abuse and use. So by doing it that way, most of the force is being taken in, is been borne by this leg, and this is getting directly attached straight vertically to the concrete floor. So this baby can take a lot of force. So here, if I come in here and I want to go ahead, let's see if I can take a piece of metal. So here's a piece of metal on this angle over here. I can go ahead and bang all day long, and this baby is moving nowhere. When I'm done with it, same thing, reverse what I just did, lift it up a little bit, remove this piece, and just gently let it drop down. And that's it. And this way it's just out of the way, so that again it keeps that flush aspect of the tabletop surface. And this thing goes right over here, and that was that. And on this side, I have the same kind of a mechanism and setup for my K5 pocket hole jig. So side 3 of section 3 is for my pocket hole jig. And the way this works is I have this piece of wood, again, just a leg. It's being held together with a magnet over here. And I'm gonna go ahead and, hold it down, and let's see if I can do it one-handed, because it should be able to. And again, it's just on a simple sheet of plywood. and it comes up like this. Once I do that, I guess I can't do this one-handed, so give me a second. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So what I did was I took that piece of wood, the leg that I had built, and it just goes in ahead and attaches and just notches into this bottom corner. And on top over here, it just comes flush with the edge of this surface here. And here I just have this little notch that I can just twist it and just put it down over here, and it's being held together with a piece of screw. And this allows it to just go absolutely nowhere, because remember, this does not have to be load bearing much, because the way the pocket hole system works, you're going to put your material on this side over here, so it needs to be supported, and these wings are designed to do that job. And then you're just applying the force to be able to drill stuff into it, and once you drill it, you take it out. So there's not much load that needs to happen. It just needs to be able to keep itself together, and that's all the whole purpose of that is. And now when I'm removing it, I think I should be able to do it in one hand, so you can see how I put it together, because it's the reverse of what I just did first. So I'm going to turn this, and I'm going to go ahead and take the bottom leg out, and as I'm taking it out, oops, I just let it slip down. Gravity takes over, and that whole platform that is sitting on a hinge just folds down, out of the way, boom, done. Down over here, and just stays right over there. So that completes the 3 sections of my tabletop, the workbench station. The one last thing I want to show you guys. All right, guys, I'm going to shift to doing a voiceover here, because I kind of went on rambling. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet and succinct. So the way this mechanism works, you're going to see in a second. As I apply pressure down onto this bar that you see where my foot is at right now, it's applying vertical force downwards. And as I'm applying force downwards, what it's doing is it's just causing the overall structure of the workbench to lift up, because what I'm trying to do essentially by applying pressure downwards is that I'm forcing the casters against the ground, where the ground is not going to move. It's a concrete floor, it's not going to go anywhere. So that's going to force the rest of the structure to just come up, and you'll see that in a second. And this wedge that is next to my leg does all the tricks. So as I stepped on it, it caused the whole workbench to get lifted up. Very easy, very smooth, hardly any pressure that I applied to my foot. At the same time, that wooden wedge dropped down, and as it dropped down, it just wedges and keeps that wooden bar wedged, so it doesn't come back up. And I have the same setup on the other side as well, the same kind of mechanism, that once I step on it, I engage the other side as well, but I'm just demonstrating the one side. So the whole workbench is lifted up just ever so slightly, and you're going to see that I'm going to show you. There you go, I'm moving it, and it's fairly easy to move it around. It's a pretty heavy workbench. I bet it's about 300 or 400 pounds right now. And I'm going to show you the same way how it's going to be. The whole mechanism comes down, so you can go back to the solid state where the workbench stays stationary. Really simple, same way, just reverse the whole process out. And there you go. So I just applied, again, I just stepped on that wooden wedge, the wooden bar, and I lifted up the wedge, and just gently lifted my foot up, and voila, the whole workbench goes back to its previous state, goes down on the floor. And now when it's down here, this thing is rock solid. It's not going to move anywhere. It's just because the gravity is keeping it. Yep, there you go. I'm trying to move it, and it's not moving anywhere. So thanks for watching my video. I hope you guys found some value out of it. I hope you found something interesting. And please also, most importantly, do not hesitate to leave any feedback. Give me some suggestions, some comments, some tips. This is a collaborative industry. There's a lot more that I need to learn, that I would love to learn from you guys. And in coming videos, I probably will do a video of this miter saw station that I built. It's turned out to be way better than I thought actually it would. There's some of the interesting design decisions that went into it that I was kind of on the fence. I'll probably touch on those. This whole thing is essentially made out of scrap plywood. And so what you see here, the main pillars, these are 4 half-inch plywood sandwiched together, and that's how I made this whole station is also on retractable casters, and it worked out really, really well for my needs, and I would love to share that with you guys too. So in the coming videos, please subscribe to my channel, and so that I can post more, share some of these tips with you. Thank you for watching. Until next time.